Hey everyone, welcome back to MangaMinute. I'm thrilled to share my latest recap video with you. If you missed the previous one, no worries, just take a quick peek in the description below for the link. Now, let's dive right in and enjoy.
In his youth, Yeep Inji had wandered the world, driven by an unrelenting quest to discover his own value and the true essence of martial prowess. His journey led him to the remote and mysterious lands of Old Tibet, where he crossed paths with a Lama monk. The monk, with his discerning eyes, recognized the latent potential within the young wanderer. Seeing in Yeep Inji a rare aptitude, the monk decided to impart a powerful martial art known as the Withered Tree Divine Art. This technique, though only a shadow of its former glory due to the loss of its advanced forms, was still formidable. It focused on external applications, fortifying the body to extraordinary levels. For Yeep Inji, who had already specialized in the art of catching blades with his bare hands, this technique was the perfect fit. It enhanced his ability to withstand direct assaults, turning his body into a weapon as tough as ancient wood. Under the monk's tutelage, Yeep Inji honed the Withered Tree Divine Art, incorporating it into his growing repertoire of martial skills. However, his ambition did not end there. Though the technique granted him remarkable strength and resilience, he yearned for a deeper mastery, one that transcended the limitations of the external applications he had been taught. This desire for true mastery eventually led him to the Black Death Alliance, an enigmatic and feared organization. Within the alliance, he encountered Yu Gil-jun, a figure whose presence promised greater knowledge and power. This meeting marked a new chapter in Yeep Inji's journey, where the boundaries of martial arts were pushed further, and the dark paths of power beckoned. Upon seeing the manual of Yeep Inji's technique, Yu Gil-jun's eyes flickered with a glint of intrigue. To Yu Gil-jun, the rediscovery of these lost abilities was not an insurmountable challenge. He believed that every martial arts name was more than a mere label. It encapsulated the core principles and philosophies of the technique itself. Chong Gang stood with intense excitement, his eyes gleaming as he prepared to unleash his technique. He believed he had the upper hand, knowing the power behind his withering skill. It wasn't just about making the body frail, like a tree stripped of life. It was more profound. The technique he had mastered allowed him to drain the energy of his opponents, much like a tree drawing water from the earth. The desiccated shell of his body belied the deep internal strength he had cultivated, energy tied to his dantian like deep roots, ready to be channeled and unleashed. With a grim laugh, he was confident that Yeon-Myeong would soon fall victim to this draining force, reducing his opponent to nothing. But something was wrong. As Chong Gang stood in anticipation of his opponent's collapse, Yeon-Myeong remained eerily calm, standing still and unaffected, as if the devastating power that had felled many before him was of no consequence. Doubt flickered in Chong Gang's mind. His confidence began to waver, as he silently questioned, why is he still fine? Before he could fully grasp the situation, a sharp pain flared through his arm. His eyes widened in disbelief as he saw it begin to burn. Panic surged through him. He recoiled in shock, unable to comprehend what was happening. His own body, once thought impenetrable, was now suffering an attack he couldn't understand. His thoughts raced, turning from disbelief to fear. Desperation filled his voice as he looked toward Yeon-Myeong, demanding answers for what was happening. Yet, Yeon-Myeong remained steady, his gaze cold, his presence unaffected by Chong Gang's mounting panic. The eerie calm that surrounded him was more unsettling than any words he could have spoken. In the past, the martial world was haunted by the presence of three fearsome individuals. Regardless of their alignment, whether they belonged to the orthodox, unorthodox, or even the demonic sects, these three were universally acknowledged as the most dangerous figures to walk the land. Known as the three vicious stars of chi absorption, their reputation was built upon a deadly technique. As their name implies, they wielded the power of chi absorption, a technique that allowed them to drain the internal energy of their opponents, leaving victims weakened and powerless. Together, they roamed the martial world, their presence feared by all. Anyone unfortunate enough to cross their path became fuel for their insatiable hunger for power. Among the three, two managed to ascend to the flame realm, a level of cultivation that made them nearly unstoppable. Their prowess so immense that few dared to challenge them. But this reign of terror existed before the arrival of the sword demon, Yeon-Myeong's master. His appearance would mark a turning point in the fate of the martial world. The sword demon strode into the authoritative office, dragging with him the severed heads of the infamous 3 vicious stars of chi absorption. Their once feared presence was now reduced to lifeless remains, proof of their downfall. He dropped them unceremoniously before the officials, their faces frozen in shock at the sight. The officers stared at the heads in disbelief, struggling to comprehend what they were witnessing. These were the same individuals who had terrorized the martial world for years, their chi absorption technique making them nearly invincible. Yet here they lay, subdued by a single man. The sword demon, however, showed no sign of triumph. His expression was indifferent, his tone almost bored. To him, this feat, which would have been unimaginable for others, was nothing more than a trivial task. His new sword technique had been in need of testing, and the 3 notorious figures had merely served as unwilling participants in his experiment. None of them had lasted more than a single stroke. Yeon-Myeong stood quietly, his mind drifting back to his master's teachings. He recalled how his master once spoke of an encounter with one of the 3 vicious stars. The enemy had attempted to absorb his master's internal energy, only to be undone by the weakness chi. The decaying nature of this energy was something ordinary martial artists could not withstand, and the men had died from his own reckless attempt. Though Yeon-Myeong had not yet mastered the weakness chi himself, it was of little consequence to him. His internal energy carried a similar deadly quality. Chong Gang's foolish decision to try and drain his energy would soon lead to his downfall. Without a flicker of emotion, Yeon-Myeong grimly addressed his opponent. He warned Chong Gang of the dangers of absorbing any energy carelessly, mocking him for his lack of understanding. The internal energy Yeon-Myeong possessed was akin to pure venom, a poison that would course through Chong Gang's body and destroy him from within. Growing weary of the situation, Yeon-Myeong's patience thinned. He felt a slight ache in his arm, and with cold indifference, he decided to end the fight once and for all. Releasing an overwhelming wave of venomous chi, he unleashed his power in full force. The venomous energy surged forward in a suffocating torrent, crashing into Chong Gang and overwhelming him instantly. Myung-il watched the battle unfold with growing concern, his eyes reflecting the worry gnawing at him. The intensity of the fight and the number of men they were losing weighed heavily on his mind. He clenched his fists, knowing they couldn't afford to lose more soldiers. The situation was spiraling out of control. Turning to Yeo Seal-ryan, he urged her to stop the battle, but his plea was met with a cold, determined response. Seal-ryan's eyes were fixed on the ongoing conflict, her expression grim and unyielding. With Yeon-hee held captive in her grasp, she made her intentions clear. The fight wouldn't end until the Tang clan's young family head was dead. Nothing else mattered to her now. Myung-il's disbelief was evident as the realization of her plan sank in. He questioned her motives, his voice thick with shock and confusion. But Seal-ryan remained resolute, her tone dark as she admitted that the young family head's skill had far surpassed her expectations. This was no ordinary opponent, and she was desperate to see him eliminated. With a sharp turn, Seal-ryan offered a grim proposal to Myung-il. She asked him, the Sword of the 9 Rings, to take down the young family head of the Tang clan himself. In exchange, she promised to release Yeon-hee. Yeon-Myeong stood amidst the aftermath of the battle, his expression indifferent as he surveyed the defeated opponents around him. His calm demeanor betrayed no sign of exertion, and his thoughts drifted to the unnecessary bloodshed. With his level of skill, he mused, there was no need for such widespread killing. The outcome had been certain from the start. But as he turned his attention away from the battlefield, a sudden commotion from the sidelines caught his ear. The atmosphere had shifted abruptly, a tension in the air that hadn't been there moments before. His gaze narrowed as he scanned the crowd, sensing something had changed, though the source of the disturbance remained unclear. Myung-il's face twisted in rage as he confronted Yeo Seal-ryan. The sight of Yeon-hee being held hostage filled him with disbelief and fury. He couldn't comprehend what kind of grudge could drive someone to take a junior disciple as a pawn. His voice quivered with anger as he demanded an explanation, struggling to understand the cruelty behind the act. Seal-ryan met his outrage with a mocking smile, her eyes filled with cold disdain. To her, Yeon-hee was not just a junior disciple. She reminded Myung-il of the death of the Mak family head, a tragedy that had left a wound in her heart that could only be healed through vengeance. The significance of that loss burned within her, and she made it clear that no cost was too high for her to settle the score, even if it meant repaying kindness with betrayal. Myeong-il's breath caught as realization dawned. He pieced together her true motives, the bitter truth of why she had volunteered to oversee the Sichuan assembly. But before he could question her further, Seal Ryan ignored his words, her focus shifting darkly. Her grim tone intensified as she reminded him of her mastery over flame techniques, a power both feared and respected. To punctuate her threat, she let her flames graze the edge of Yeonhee's clothing, the fabric beginning to smolder. The subtle display of power was enough to drive home her point. Yeonhee, fragile and defenseless, could easily be consumed by the fire. Seal Ryan's cold determination made it clear that she would not hesitate to take the life of an innocent to fulfill her thirst for revenge. Myeong-il's eyes burned with fury as he confronted Yeo Seal Ryan. The audacity of her actions, holding Yeonhee, the leader's daughter, hostage, was beyond unforgivable. His voice trembled with both anger and warning as he threatened her, his hand hovering dangerously close to his sword. At this range, he was confident he could sever her head with a single strike if it came to that. But Seal Ryan only met his rage with a mocking smile. She acknowledged his skill, knowing full well that a martial artist of Myeong-il's caliber could end her life. Yet her tone was sly, laced with manipulation. She taunted him, reminding him that in his anger, a careless sword swing could mar the delicate features of Yeonhee, the hostage standing between them. The threat was clear. His power was neutralized by his concern for the innocent life in her grasp. Myeong-il was left with no choice. Frustration and helplessness surged within him as he reluctantly agreed to her terms. He cursed Seal Ryan for her cowardice, bitterly vowing that once this was over, her life would be forfeit as well. His grim determination set, he had no choice but to play along for now. Seal Ryan laughed at his resolve, mocking his threat as she reveled in her control over the situation. She carelessly claimed that if he could rid her of the cunning young family head of the Tang clan, she would welcome death with open arms. With no other option, Myeong-il stepped into the arena, his heart heavy with frustration and rage. His mission was clear: eliminate Yeon-Myeong and secure Yeonhee's release. But beneath the surface, a burning desire for vengeance simmered within him, promising retribution for Seal Ryan's manipulative cruelty. As Myeong-il stepped into the arena, the murmurs of the crowd grew louder, disbelief rippling through them. One of the 6 Grand Masters was about to intervene in the battle, something unheard of in such a setting. All eyes were on him as he faced Yeon-Myeong, the tension in the air thick with expectation. Myeong-il, his face grim with regret, spoke directly to Yeon-Myeong. This was not a battle he had intended to fight, but the circumstances had forced his hand. There was no malice in his words, only a heavy sense of duty. Unsheathing his sword, he explained that he had someone he had to protect, someone whose life mattered more than his own. With that in mind, he promised to make the fight quick and painless, seeking to end it with honor despite the shameful situation he found himself in. As the cold steel of his sword gleamed in the light, Yeo Seal Ryan, watching from the sidelines, signaled her subordinates. In response, they began to play music, a melody that hung eerily over the arena. Yeon-Myeong's sharp senses immediately picked up on the sudden shift. His eyes narrowed in suspicion as he recognized the strange melody, unsettled by its unexpected timing. The music, however, was no ordinary sound. It was a lethal sound transmission technique, imbued with chi. As the melody drifted across the arena, it carried with it a hidden danger. To those untrained or unprepared, it could shatter their eardrums, causing their ears to explode from the inside. The crowd, unaware of the true nature of the music, continued to murmur, while those sensitive to chi felt the oppressive weight of the melody taking hold. As the haunting melody filled the arena, Myeong-il's frustration boiled over. He called out to Yeo Seal Ryan, his voice laced with outrage and disbelief. He demanded to know what she was playing at with her sound techniques, questioning the morality of dragging innocent heirs into this chaotic mess. The use of such a technique seemed like a despicable tactic to him, one that was beneath their honor. Seal Ryan, however, responded with a mocking tone, brushing off Myeong-il's concerns. She assured him with feigned calmness that Yeonhee, held captive and supposedly safe, would not be affected by the music. Her dismissive attitude only fueled Myeong-il's anger, his face reddening with the shame and frustration of the situation. He demanded that the sound technique be cancelled, unable to tolerate the additional trickery in what was already a dire confrontation. But Seal Ryan remained unyielding, her expression one of cold determination. Her voice dripped with scorn as she justified the use of the technique. To her, the suffering of Myeong-il and the impending terror faced by Yeon-Myeong were a form of retribution, a way to make the young family head experience the same fear that had once afflicted Mak In-hoo. Her words were sharp, a clear directive for Myeong-il to proceed with his task, cut off Yeon-Myeong's head without delay. With a determined glint in his eye, Yeon-Myeong brought forth his ring shurikens, ready to act. The relentless melody of the sound technique, which had been overwhelming the arena, was about to be silenced. Without hesitation, he executed his invisible whirlwind blade dance, a technique known for its swift precision. His shurikens flew through the air, each one finding its mark with deadly accuracy. In moments, the music players, who had been responsible for amplifying the sound technique, were eliminated. The cacophony ceased abruptly, leaving a stunned silence in its wake. The sudden quiet was a welcome reprieve from the oppressive noise that had filled the arena. With the disruption handled, Yeon-Myeong addressed the arena with a mockingly casual tone. He acknowledged the interruption with a hint of irony, noting that the noise issue had been mostly resolved. His gaze then turned to Myeong-il, his expression challenging and composed. Yeon-Myeong's words were clear. He had dealt with the immediate threat of the sound technique and was now ready for the battle to continue. He gestured for Myeong-il to proceed, his demeanor calm despite the earlier chaos. The arena was now set for the confrontation, with the stage cleared for the final act of the conflict that lay ahead.